Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CRE Radio. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jay Darren Gross. This is the podcast focused on commercial real estate investment and risk management strategies. Weekly, we have conversations with commercial real estate investors and professionals who provide their experience and insight to help you grow your real estate portfolio. Today's interview is sponsored by Building Insurance and Risk. When you invest in real estate, it pays to work with a real estate investor protection specialist to protect yourself and your investment from catastrophic loss. The experts at Building Insurance and Risk focus on real estate investor protection. They provide you with multiple insurance coverage offers and a side-by-side coverage comparison. To learn more, go to buildinginsurancerisk.com. Today, my guest is Nick Prefontaine with Wicked Smart Real Estate and Common Goal. And Nick's an author, a trainer, and investor. And in just a minute, we're going to speak with Nick about how you can overcome the challenging times ahead. But first, a quick reminder, if you like our show, CRE Radio, there are a couple things you can do to help. You can like, share, and subscribe. And as always, we encourage you to leave a comment. We love to hear from our listeners. Also, if you want to see how handsome our guests are, be sure to check out our YouTube channel. You can find us on YouTube at Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. And while you're there, please subscribe. With that, I want to welcome my guest, Nick Prefontaine. Welcome back to CRE Radio.
Hey, Darren, I'm excited to be here, and it's been too long.
It definitely has. No, I'm excited to be talking with you today. But before we get started, if you could take just a minute and share with the listeners a little bit about your background.
Sure. So back in 2003, I was at ski club with my friends. My friends and I had got ready for snowboarding for ski club on the bus, so we wouldn't miss a precious moment once we got to the mountain. And we got to the mountain, and because we were already headed straight for the top, when the rest of the school headed inside to get ready, on the way up there, we noticed that people were wiping out everywhere because it had been raining earlier in the day. Needless to say, it wasn't our first go around. We weren't beginners. We knew what we were doing. So I got to the top, buckled in my snowboard, took a breath of that crisp winter air, and confidently charged towards the biggest jump in the terrain park with all my speed. And going up to the jump, I caught the edge of my snowboard on the snow going up the jump, which threw me off balance. And that was the last thing that I remember. I was told later that I landed on my head and I wasn't wearing a helmet. Something else that I learned was that my goggles were the only protection that my head had. They told me that with each subsequent hit, my goggles mysteriously moved to cushion each blow as I rolled down the mountain. And they wanted to, because of the severity of my injury, I wasn't wearing a helmet, but the goggles protected me. But because of the severity of my injury, they wanted to bring a helicopter to the mountain to rush me to the hospital. And they couldn't because it was too windy, so they sent in an ambulance. So the ambulance, there was only on the team of paramedics that were working around the clock, there was only one of them specialized enough to intubate right on the spot. And because of the severity of my injury, I needed that to be able to breathe. And luckily for me, I was fortunate that he was one of the ones that showed up to the mountain that day. So there were several things that broke in my favor, my goggles, that. And then when I got to the hospital, I was lying there in a coma in the ICU, unable to communicate with anyone. And my parents were the only, my family and my parents, my immediate family and parents were the only ones who were allowed in that room, definitely during the beginning. And the doctors would, this is the third thing that I really point to. The doctors would come into my room and they figured, oh, he's in a coma. He can't hear what I'm saying. So they went to share the grim news, and it was worse and worse, more negative, more negative, each time they came in to share updates with my parents on the progress on how I was doing. And fortunate for me, and really the rest of my life, my parents stopped them. And they said, no, 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 not here, not in front of him, because they knew even though I was in a coma, I was still taking information. And as I mentioned, especially in the early stages, these updates from the doctors were not very positive. They had to give them the worst case scenario. So once out of the room, the doctors shared with my parents that I probably wasn't going to be able to walk, talk, or eat on my own ever again. And even if I was able to come out of my coma, there was a good chance that I would need 24-hour care for the rest of my life. So fortunate for me, my parents didn't accept this like so many others do, so many other families and patients do, as a death sentence. They took the information, realized that it was the worst case scenario, that the doctors legally, they had to share that. So they took the information, thanked the doctors, and then this allowed me to treat it like any other situation. So I would say a month after that, I was in a coma for 3 weeks. I don't remember a month because it was a partially induced coma due to the severity of it. Once I was aware of my surroundings and the work that was left in front of me, I got up, did the best that I could, and I kept getting better every day. Now, this support was instrumental in laying the foundation for the rest of my recovery. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was starting to use the very framework that would help me to overcome and achieve any obstacle throughout the rest of my life. And that's a step system, which if we have time later on, we can go into. But what the step is an acronym that we created and I unknowingly used. It stands for support, trust, energy, and persistence. And just remind me when we get a little later on at the end, I can share more about that, and listeners, if they want to learn more about it. Then after running, what I did as soon as I could communicate, I heard that my family and parents had the goal for me to make a full recovery. What family or what parents wouldn't want for their son or daughter to make a full recovery from that accident, of course. However, Darren, I heard in the back of my head that no, you're not just going to make a full recovery. You're going to run out of the hospital. So then running out of the hospital became our common goal. And who we organized all of the doctors and therapists with a common goal. And we would schedule weekly meetings to keep everyone pulling in the same direction. So if you fast forward a little bit for the sake of time here, less than 60 days later, I ran out of the hospital. And after running out of the hospital, it wasn't like my work was done. I had to continue to go to outpatient therapy for another 6 months, along with being tutored all summer long, 5 days a week, in order to continue onto high school with the rest of my classmates. And looking back on it, it's a little surreal that only 18 months after that, I was knocking on the doors of some distressed sellers that hadn't paid their mortgage in months, sometimes years. These are notice of default doors that I was knocking on. And this was reflected back to me by my mentor, Trisha Brooke, recently, right, a little over a year ago. She said, wait a minute, so you were, after recovering and finishing your outpatient rehab, you were only 18 months later going into some not so nice areas of cities and knocking on these doors of these homeowners that had missed a few payments, or let's face it, it was 05, 06, had missed like 10 to 12 payments and the bank still hadn't foreclosed. She said that was really a part of your recovery, going door to door and helping people out of their unfortunate situation. And I realized, I was like, oh, wow, it was. Okay, because when you're younger, time is compressed. 2 years or 18 months seems like a lifetime when you're a teenager, but it's really not a lot of time at all. That led me after I got out of high school, I got my real estate license and started helping buyers and sellers as a realtor. And then I actually in 2014, my dad approached me at the end of 2014. He approached me because he was, as an investor, buying homes creatively. So without using any of his cash or investor cash or any of his credit. Um, so he was getting all these properties, buying them through a rent to own. I'll just throw out a couple examples, like a rent to own, closing on it subject to, closing on it with owner financing, and then however he was buying them creatively, he was always selling on a rent to own. So that's where I came in, and that's where he needed my help putting them on the market. And then after I put them on the market, I he said I need help dealing with all these buyers because he was busy on the road getting more property. So I started helping with the buyers, and over a year, my income shifted where I was making 90% of my income working with him as an investor. So it didn't even make sense for me to keep my real estate license. So I let it go in January of 2016 and joined him full time. And really, what I did with him was, yeah, work with the buyers, but not just answer the phone and be an order taker. I developed a process, like a very particular process that we have to bring the buyer through. So they're able to not only get into the home on a rent-to-own agreement, but they're going to get to the end and be able to qualify and get their own loan. And where a lot of the investors out there probably only have 10 or 20% of their rent-to-own buyers actually buying the home, we have an inverse percentage. So 80 to 90% of the buyers that we work with end up buying the home. And that's because of the very strict process and stringent process that we put them through initially and over the course of the term, that's going to enable them and equip them to be able to qualify for their own loan at the end. So I will go ahead and take a breath because I've been talking a lot. So if you have any questions, we can dive into it.
No, you've said a lot, and I think the kind of, and I appreciate you doing that in order for us to kind of set the stage here so we can get into a conversation. Given that we're recording this in May of 2023, the current economic situation has few challenges, especially around real estate, with interest rates being having risen from where they were for the last couple of years, being very, very low. There is a cloud of uncertainty that's hanging over us with lots of recession talk, and it's been kind of lingering. And as of yet, nobody's officially said we're in a recession. I've heard whispers and other things that suggest that conditions on the ground may represent more of a recession kind of thing. I think what I was hoping, and maybe we can get into a little bit, is an investor that's either wanting to start today, or somebody that's new and has started but's trying to grow. They're facing some challenges, and given your personal experience with the accident, and your coming through to living a full life when you were the medical professionals thought that would never be the case, your experience in real estate, and this the multiple ways you and your family's company have structured the the acquisition and also then the sale. Um, I'm thinking that like just kind of focusing on how the listeners can position themselves today so that they have success tomorrow, and how to work through that. And in fact, maybe your step process plays along, in part of that. Um, does that sound like something you can speak to? Does that make sense? I guess the question.
Yeah. Let me do this. I actually think to do this justice, why don't we dive in? Unless you think no, that wasn't what I was thinking about at all. Why don't we dive in a little bit into the nuts and bolts about how we're actually, like, who we're helping as far as the sellers, and then who we're helping as far as the buyers, just to give the listeners a better idea. Because I know
Yeah,
I glossed over that, but I think that's really important.
yeah. No, I
So
think that kind of qualifies it, sets it up so they understand.
yeah, I wanted to go in a little bit more detail that. So I think generally speaking, now we buy from a number of different we buy homes from, as investors, from a number of different people in a number of different situations. However, generally speaking, the homes that we're working with are homes that have had trouble selling on the open market. So we're able to, generally speaking, we're able to give them a price that's a little bit higher than what the conventional market, all cash, will bear at this time. That comes in the form of a delayed cash sale. So whether there's underlying debt, whether we're buying it with owner financing, and there's the only way that we do that, or one of the ways that we do that, is if there's no debt on the property with principal only payments, and we're able to make a little bit, um, able to bump up the price a little bit because of that. If someone has an existing loan, we'll work with that either on a rent to own agreement, or we'll close on it and buy it subject to. However we're buying it though, and those are just a few examples. However we're buying it though, we're always selling it on a rent to own. And like 90 to 95% of the time, we're able to get our buyers to a point where they're mortgage ready inside of 24 months. So the majority of the terms that we do with our buyers are 24 months. And how we're buying these properties, our terms are, generally speaking, 3 to 5 years, and more recently, sometimes even 10 years and beyond. Um, so it's really important to mention that the buyers, just to touch on the process we bring them through, it requires it's going to require a down payment. So it requires 3 to 10% down of the purchase price. And then initially, if it's, every property is different, but if it's a little bit lower on that range, like more in the 3 to 5% range, we'd like to see a plan that gets them up closer to the 10% over the course of their lease, so that once they do come to the end and they do go for their own loan, they're that much more likely to be approved for their own loan. They're responsible for all maintenance, repair, and upkeep over their term. And then any repairs and upgrades that they make to the home and subsequent increase in equity, that's their benefit because they're locking in their price day one. So that's a little bit just jumping into the trenches about like the nuts and bolts of how it works, just to give your listeners a better idea.
Got it. So let's talk about where maybe a good place to start is just kind of the opportunities. What the focus on your, I mean, there's two different points that you guys focus on. One is acquiring the properties, and then the other is the buyers, creating a list of or pool of buyers for the properties. Um, on the acquisition, can you speak to a little bit more? Is it primarily, uh, stuff that hasn't sold? Is that kind of the low hanging fruit that you're able to come in and make an offer that you know a seller is more willing to work with you on?
Yeah, exactly. So I'll give you an example of a deal that is gosh, it's actually closing, going to be closing in a couple weeks. Um, we actually came in and we got it on I believe it was a 9-year lease purchase agreement. So we've had this, no, I think it was closer to a 7-year lease purchase agreement. We put a rent to own buyer in there. Um, it it didn't work out. They had a life event. And then we had to do some upgrades and improvements to the property. And we put another buyer in there. And then they were self-employed, had their own business, and then COVID happened. And eh, we they were at a point where they didn't have income coming in. And then with the moratorium and everything for evictions and everything like that, um we just got that property back earlier this year. We got a realtor in there, got it listed, and we're going to be closing on it in a couple weeks. That was someone that couldn't sell the property on the open market. So we said to him, we'll give you a higher price. What we're going to do is take care of your underlying debt, because there was a mortgage on the property. So we continue to pay the mortgage monthly, and we have for years. And he didn't have to worry about all maintenance, repair, and upkeep over the course of his term. That is something that we got contractually, and then we passed that along to our rent-to-own buyer that was in the property. Now, when they weren't able to purchase and COVID happened and everything, of course, we had to come in there and take over responsibility for that. But the kind of the thing that no one sees, they only hear or see the HUD or the settlement statement, and they say, "Oh my God, you guys made 100,000 on that." Well, that's not the whole story, because we had to do a lot for that 100,000 that we're going to be getting in a couple weeks.
So the extent of the work that you had to do to that, was it, was that what was keeping the original seller from being able to sell it on an open market, or?
No, it was a different time.
Okay.
It was it was a different time. This was back in 2015, 2016. So the market wasn't in a position where it was people talk about, and this is something that I wanted to touch on. I've just been thinking of this. People touch on, oh, the market's tough now. I'm like, really? You think the market's tough right now? I got my real estate license in March of 2008. Like, the market's strong right now. I feel like, um, and I just anyway, that's just, it was a different time in 2015 or 2016. It was a different time, meaning that homes weren't moving like hotcakes and selling with multiple offers in a weekend. So he wasn't able to get his price. So we benefit. He doesn't benefit, but we have benefited from the principal pay down over the, call it, 7 or 8 years. We've benefited from that. So every month we make a payment, the mortgage is continuing to come down, along with the benefits of appreciation and everything like that. We're gaining in that upside as the
Oh,
investor.
yeah. So you guys, you acquired it when the market was kind of in a challenging state. You put second tenant in there, ended up having to make the payments. But the end, is approaching here. You've got a retail buyer in today's market, and like you said, you still had to carry the mortgage all during that time when you had a renter that wasn't paying. Um, your structure of the purchase with the buyer, was that a cash payment, or did you make was it cash upon sale? How was it that what were the
The
terms that you offered?
recent, the buyer that we're closing in a couple weeks, are you talking about, or
No,
the
the
first
seller,
one?
the seller that you purchased you acquired the property from. What
Yep.
was the
Uh, I don't believe memory, just going from memory here, but I don't believe we did a down payment. We just told him that we'll relieve you of your monthly payment, of your mortgage payment, and we'll take over all responsibility for the property until such time that we can cash you out in the future. Um, there wasn't an option for him at that time, because he was at a point where if he sold with a realtor conventionally, he would have had to show up at the closing table and pay 10 or 15,000 for the realtor. Whereas now, because we've had the properties and the property for years, the mortgage has come down, the market's appreciated. Yeah, we've had to deal with um a few life events that have happened in tenant buyers' lives, but that's reality. That's real estate investing. So, um, I mean, of course, we would have liked to see the buyer succeed. If the buyer was able to succeed, then everyone would have been able to move on sooner. However, they weren't able to. So, in this case, it's unfortunate, but we're still able to do okay.
got it? But just again for the seller that you acquired the property from, was there any or will they benefit anything? Will they receive anything, or was it just more a matter of that you took a head on, took the pain that they were facing off their, took it away from them to where they didn't have to deal with it?
Their mortgage, the underlying debt will be paid off. Their name will be off title. But that's it. Nothing else.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
No, and I think so. Here's kind of the thing. I guess I'm kind of curious about it. And it's interesting, when you say that, these are amazing times, and truly in comparison to, history, we're in good shape. I mean, interest rates are
Yeah.
not like, oh my God. Um, the market is still full of, more buyers than sellers. Um, and when you keep that in mind, it's a good, the market is in a good position. I think sometimes just as you were talking about it, I recognize that some of the people I've been observing or like paying attention to are people that are more reflective of just recent times as opposed to now. And, I think there's also a sense of like we're due for a some sort of an event or a crash just based on the economic cycles and that. And so there's more of a looking for a challenge. So that, having listened to you just for a minute here and kind of thought about it, the reality is that it's a good time. It's a good time to get into real estate. Uh,
Always a good time to get in.
Always a good time. Right. There's never, I've got clients that have made money in all markets.
Mhm.
Um, whenever, whenever there's a situation, they've always been able to find the opportunity in the market and, play to the strengths of the market rather than trying to make the market do something that it no longer is doing.
Yeah.
And, so I think the takeaway I'm kind of hearing is that, hey, it's a good market. There's always a good opportunity. It's up to you, the investor, to find the opportunity and play to the opportunity rather than trying to get yesterday's deals to fit today's market. And, I think that's pretty wise. Um,
Yeah, you're not going to do yourself any favors by living in the past.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Um, for somebody that's looking to get started, any um or anybody's currently looking to grow, anybody that's looking to get started, are there any words of wisdom or ideas you can share that you would encourage somebody to consider uh, in order to start or grow their portfolio?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm not going to pretend, and we're not going to pretend, Aaron, to be all things to all people. We get that. Our niche, creative real estate, um, I'm a little biased. I think it's the best niche to be involved in, and we're a little biased. However, I know it's not reality, and whatever niche that you're interested in, just get with someone who's doing deals, not just teaching it, but actually doing deals in that niche, and follow them. And that's kind of what we're doing with our associates. So if anything what I said today rings true and you want to learn more about what we're doing, you can go to our website, which is smartrealestatecoach.com. And if you scroll down, you can get registered for the free master's class. And there you're going to learn about all about our trademark 3 payday system, where you can get paid up to 3 times on a deal, as opposed to just one way. And when I was a realtor, it was just one way: sell a house, get a commission. And now this is up to 3 different ways. So you get money, number one, when the buyer puts their down payment down to get in the house, you make money monthly. The spread between what you're able to create between the mortgage or the payment to the seller, and what you're able to collect from the buyer, we call that payday 2. And the third is, and oftentimes it's the greatest, that's why it incentivizes us to get buyers to the finish line. As I mentioned, the deal in a couple weeks that's closing, that's 100,000. That's the just like a high level overview of the 3 payday system that you're going to learn about in that master's class, and a little bit more about how we buy and sell on terms. I hope that answered your question. It was
No,
all over the place.
yeah. No, that's kind of what I was looking for there.
Perfect.
Hey, Nick, if we could, I'd like to shift gears here for a second. By day, I'm an insurance broker, and as such, I work with my clients to assess risk and determine what to do with the risk. And there's 3 strategies we typically consider. We first look to see if we can avoid the risk, and when that's not an option, we look to see if there's a way we can minimize the risk. And if we cannot avoid nor minimize the risk, we look to see if we can transfer the risk. And that's what an insurance policy is. It's a risk transfer vehicle. And as such, I like to ask my guests if they can look at their own situation. You could frame this however you would like. It could be your clients, investors, the um, the Fed rate, the government, anything political. However you consider, or whatever you consider to be the biggest risk. And just for clarification, while I am an insurance broker, I am not necessarily looking for an insurance related answer. And so if you're willing, I'd like to ask you, Nick Prefontaine, what is the biggest risk?
What is the biggest risk? So the biggest risk to me is not following that voice in the back of your head. Now I'd like to frame that in a few different ways if I can. So when I was in the hospital, that voice was, no, they said you're going to make a full recovery. My parents that was their goal. You're going to make a full recovery. I followed the voice that said, no, you're going to run out. Then all throughout my life, no matter what I'm doing, as a successful realtor, as a successful real estate investor, and then as I moved into being a coach and a trainer with Smart Real Estate Coach, as well as still do deals, I've always had that voice in the back of my head, which has told me that I have to be speaking and sharing my story and helping others that are going through a trauma, life challenge, or adversity, and helping them get through to the other side. I think the biggest risk is not listening to that voice and rationalizing it away. 2 years ago, I reached out, I got to a point and I reached out to my mentor to have a conversation with her and share my goals and my vision about what I wanted to do. And I said, what do you think I should do? She said, the speaker salon in New York City, where I commuted for 6 weeks in a row to New York City. That was in the fall of 21. During that, she presented or pitched the idea of working with her one-on-one. She helps speakers to build out their speaker platform and really fine-tune their craft and their message. And I said yes. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I said yes. And a week later, I locked it in with her. And without her, and without listening to that voice in the back of my head, I wouldn't have Common Goal and the speaking career that I have to this day. And she was one that actually helped me develop the STEP system, which I touched on: support, trust, energy, and persistence. I know we didn't have time to really go over that today, but if any of your listeners are interested in downloading the free ebook STEP, where they're going to learn all about support, trust, energy, and persistence, they can go to nickprefontaine.com/STEP to download the STEP system for free today.
Awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. And I would encourage anybody to check out the book, and also some of the other books that are available through the Wicked Smart. I mean, there's
Oh, thank you for
yeah,
reminding me. Yeah,
yeah.
thank you for reminding me. I have a free book for your listeners. So if they go to wickedsmartbooks.com/CREPN, they can get a free copy of the New Rules of Real Estate Investing, which I'm an author in. I'm a co-author in that as well. And they're going to learn from 24 leading experts. Like I said, we're biased. We think our niche is the best, but all these different experts share their niche and their strategy and everything, so you can decipher for yourself what is the best. And when I say we'll send it to you for free, we're not going to hit you up for shipping and handling. I mean, totally free, 100% free. We'll get that out to you.
No, and it's a great, the book you just referenced. I know I've read it and found it to be a great book, and can't encourage enough anybody that's looking to get into real estate, and or in real estate, looking for some pearls of wisdom. It's a great book there. So appreciate that. Nick, I cannot say thanks enough for taking the time to talk again today. I've enjoyed it again, and continue to learn every time we speak. And I look forward to doing it our next time. So we will be in touch soon.
I had a blast as I did last time. I had a blast. We got to not let so much time go by when we're doing this.
You got it. You got it. All right. For our listeners, if you like this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. That's all we've got this week. Till next time. Thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio.